India and Africa, two huge places, right? Lots of people, lots of potential. You'd think they'd be best buddies, trading up a storm. And they are trading, just not always in the way people think. See, there's this idea floating around that India's like that friend who always borrows your stuff but never lends anything back, always exporting, never importing. But here's the twist. When it comes to Africa, that's not quite true. It's way more complicated and way more interesting than that. Turns out India's actually buying a whole lot more from Africa than it's selling. We're talking billions of dollars more. That's right, Africa's coming out on top. Why? Well, one word, resources. Africa's got them in spades. Oil, minerals, you name it. And India, with its booming economy, needs them. So next time someone tells you India's just taking advantage of Africa, hit them with some facts. It's a two-way street, folks, and Africa's holding its own. Let's talk energy. India's got over 1 billion people and they're not all riding bicycles. They need fuel and lots of it. Enter Africa, stage left with its vast oil reserves. Think of it like this. India's the thirsty friend who always shows up at your place asking for juice. And Africa? Africa's got the juice. Literally. Crude oil, to be precise. This isn't just about trade. It's about energy security. India can't rely on just a few countries for its oil. It needs reliable partners. And guess who fits the bill? Africa. Section 4. Nigeria and Angola, the oil titans fueling India. Now, not all African countries are created equal when it comes to oil. Two big players stand out, Nigeria and Angola. These guys are the heavyweights pumping out millions of barrels of oil every single day. And where does a lot of that oil end up? You guessed it, India. We're talking about a significant chunk of India's total oil imports. These two countries are vital for keeping India's lights on and its cars running. But it's not just a one-way street. This oil trade brings in much-needed revenue for Nigeria and Angola, boosting their economies and creating jobs. It's a win-win, at least on the surface. Section 5, India. From crude to refined, a refining powerhouse. So India's importing all this crude oil from Africa. But what's it doing with it all? Well, India's got another trick up its sleeve, refining. See, crude oil is pretty useless on its own. It's like having a block of cheese but no pizza. You've got to refine it, turn it into something usable. And India's become really, really good at refining. They've invested heavily in massive refineries that can process huge quantities of crude oil, turning it into petrol, diesel, and all sorts of other petroleum products. Section 6, Africa's refining riddle, a bottleneck in the system. Now here's the catch. While Africa's got the crude oil, it doesn't have enough refineries to process it all. It's like having a mountain of grapes but no winery. This means that African countries often have to export their crude oil, then turn around and import refined petroleum products, which can be way more expensive. It's a bit of a frustrating situation. Africa's sitting on this massive resource, but doesn't always reap the full benefits because of this refining bottleneck. Section 7, a two-way street, the India-Africa oil tango. So, what's the takeaway from all this? It's not as simple as India exporting to Africa or vice versa. It's a complex relationship built around mutual dependence, especially in the oil sector. India needs Africa's oil, and Africa benefits from India's refining capacity and demand. It's a delicate dance, one that requires understanding, cooperation, and a fair deal for both sides. This is the real story behind India-Africa trade, a story of energy, resources, and the interconnectedness of nations in our globalized world.